My name is Harper Evans, and I've always been good at pretending. I suppose you could say I learned from the best, my mother, Elaine. She had this knack for swapping lives like changing coats in winter. When I was 16, she shed our family like old skin and vanished with a man named Leonard, who promised her the glittering pieces of a life she thought my father, Rick Evans, could never give her. The day she left is burned into me. I remember standing in the driveway, my hair still damp from a shower, watching her trunk slam shut on the last of her boxes. She didn't hug me. She didn't promise to call. She only glanced at my father, whose face was too stunned to look angry yet, and said, "It's better this way, Harper. For everyone." Then she got into Leonard's car and never looked back. After that, it was just me and Dad. He worked overtime shifts at the auto shop and cooked hamburger helper for dinner most nights. We didn't talk much about her, at first because it hurt too much, later because we both figured she didn't deserve it. I grew up. I graduated high school with decent grades and got a job at a local bookstore while I took night classes at community college. My father stayed my rock. When I thought about family, I thought about him. My mother? She might as well have been dead. But of course, ghosts have a habit of returning. And so did Elaine. I was 22 when she reappeared in my life like a bad penny. It started with a message on Facebook. I still remember how my hands shook when I saw the name, Elaine Morgan. She'd married Leonard, apparently, except she hadn't. Leonard was gone. Now there was someone new, Charles Morgan. She'd attached photos of their wedding, a fancy country club affair in Vermont. In the pictures she looked younger than I remembered, draped in pearls and satin, Charles smiling next to her, broad-shouldered in a tux. There were kids in the pictures too, 2 boys and a girl, all blonde and bright-toothed like something out of a commercial. "I'd love to see you, Harper," the message read. "Come for dinner. Meet your new family." New family. My father laughed when I told him. He didn't say no, he never forbid me anything, but I could see in his eyes what he wanted. "Don't go. She'll break your heart again." Maybe that's why I did go. Or maybe I wanted to see what she'd become, and if I could stand to look her in the eye. That first dinner was like stepping into a play I hadn't auditioned for. Elaine's new house was big, white, expensive, overdecorated like she'd torn pages from a home design magazine and ordered every piece. Charles greeted me at the door, big handshake, big smile. The kids, Noah, 18, Maddie, 15, and Simon, 11, were polite in that awkward, suspicious way kids are when they're told someone new is family. Elaine floated in last, all pearls and perfume. She hugged me too long, fingers digging into my shoulder blades like she was afraid I'd bolt. "Look at you," she breathed, pulling back to study my face. "You're perfect, Harper. Just perfect." That's when I realized I wasn't a daughter. I was a prop. The meal was steak, asparagus, twice-baked potatoes. Charles asked about my life, my job, my classes. Elaine beamed at every word I said, interrupting to brag, how smart I was, how I'd always been independent, how she was so proud I'd stayed out of trouble without her around. She made it sound like she'd been my guiding light all along. I smiled through it. I laughed at Charles's jokes. I complimented the house, the kids, the food. When Maddie asked if I'd come again, I told her I'd love to. Inside, though, something small and cold coiled tight in my chest. My mother wanted to wear me like a badge, proof she was a good mother after all. Proof to Charles and his country club friends that she could blend our histories like cream and coffee, make it all look perfect. So I made a choice. If she wanted perfect, I'd give her perfect. I'd play her game. I'd wear the smile, say the lines, do the hugs. But underneath it all, I'd be watching. Waiting. Looking for cracks in the perfect porcelain of her new life. I wasn't 16 anymore. And I hadn't waited 6 years for an apology I knew would never come. No, if Elaine wanted me back in her life, she'd regret it. I'd make sure of that. Over the next few months, I became Elaine's masterpiece. Every Sunday, I sat at her long mahogany dining table, smiling while she paraded me in front of Charles's family, his stern mother, Patricia, his brother Wesley and Wesley's wife, Janine. They were the country club type, polite but cold, always watching Elaine with tight smiles that never touched their eyes. To them, I was Exhibit A, proof Elaine could be the doting stepmother and devoted mother all at once. Elaine liked to stand behind my chair when we had guests, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. I could feel her nails sometimes, pressing through my sweater like claws. Whenever Patricia complimented me, Elaine would squeeze just a little harder, as if reminding me, smile. Perform. So I performed. I baked muffins for Simon's soccer team. I helped Maddie pick out her homecoming dress, pink satin with a tiny diamond belt that made her feel like a princess. I even offered to proofread Noah's college essays. He was stiff around me at first, suspicious of the sudden half-sister dropped in his lap, but he softened when I praised his writing, told him he was smart enough to get into Columbia or NYU. The truth was his essays were average at best, but my praise made him smile, so I kept feeding him little pieces of the sister act. When Charles hosted a charity gala at the house, Elaine introduced me to every donor and club wife as my wonderful daughter, Harper. She's in college, she's so bright, she's so mature, I don't know what I'd do without her. Her voice was honey and knives. I knew the real meaning. Look what I made. Look what a good mother I am. I let her gloat. I even played along, letting her loop her arm through mine while photographers snapped pictures. But afterward, when she drifted off with Charles to schmooze some banker, I slipped outside to the patio. I needed air, needed to remind myself who I really was. That night, leaning against the cold stone railing, I found my first crack. Patricia cornered me by the garden, a glass of white wine trembling in her thin hand. She studied me the way a jeweler inspects a fake diamond. She left you and your father, didn't she? Patricia asked suddenly. Her voice was quiet, but her eyes were sharp. When you were what, 16? I froze. The music from inside floated through the open French doors, smooth jazz, polite laughter. Yes, ma'am, I said. She did. Patricia snorted, a sound that didn't fit her pearl necklace and neat hair. And now you're here. Back under her wing. She didn't say why. She didn't have to. I saw the question in her eyes, what does Elaine want with you? I shrugged. She's my mother. Family is family. Patricia tilted her head, and for the first time her lips twitched, almost a smile, almost pity. Don't let her fool you, dear. People don't change. Especially not women like Elaine. She drifted away after that, back to the bright lights and clinking glasses. But her words stuck in my ribs like a needle. I spent the next few weeks doing my homework, on Elaine, on Charles, on the kids. I learned that Charles had money, old money. His father had owned a chain of grocery stores in the 80s, sold them for millions. Charles himself ran a real estate firm, but the real wealth was trust funds and properties he'd inherited. Elaine hadn't signed a prenup, which was interesting. Risky, for a man like Charles. Or maybe he thought he'd found his perfect, beautiful wife who'd never betray him. Elaine told people she met Charles at a fundraiser for the local arts center. What she didn't tell them was that she'd been Leonard's mistress for 2 years before that, or that Leonard left her bankrupt when he ran off to Belize with a younger woman. She didn't tell them about the bankruptcy filings under her maiden name. Or the eviction notices. But I found it all: old court documents, tax liens, dusty news snippets buried in online archives. I made neat little folders on my laptop, each labeled and dated. I told myself I was just gathering ammunition. I didn't know yet how I'd use it, but I knew the chance would come. The chance came faster than I expected. One night in February, after another staged family dinner, I stayed late to help clean up. Charles went upstairs to check on Simon, who'd come down with the flu. Maddie was in the den doing homework. Elaine poured herself a glass of red wine and sat at the kitchen island, watching me load the dishwasher like I was her live-in maid. She was drunk, too drunk to notice the bite in my voice when I asked, "Did you ever think about calling me?" Back then? Elaine didn't look at me. She swirled her wine and stared into the dark red swirl like it held secrets. "You were with your father. You were fine. I was 16. You were always strong." Her voice turned flinty, annoyed. "Don't play victim, Harper. It doesn't suit you." There it was. The truth. I wasn't her daughter, I was her alibi. Her redemption arc. Her stage prop. I closed the dishwasher slowly, wiped my hands on a towel. "You really think they'd believe you over me?" I asked. Elaine's eyes snapped up. For a second, just a flicker, I saw fear. Then it vanished, replaced by that cold, perfect smile. "I'm your mother," she said sweetly. "You'd never hurt me." I leaned in, close enough to smell the sour wine on her breath. "Watch me." I left her there, frozen, lips parted. The next morning she texted me a smiley face and a reminder about next Sunday's brunch. As if nothing had happened. She had no idea I'd already made up my mind. I'd ruin her. Piece by piece. By spring, I was in deep. Deep enough that if you looked from the outside, you'd think I was one of them. Maddie called me when she needed help with her French homework. Noah texted me late at night, wanting advice on which schools he should tour first. I even started driving Simon to soccer practice when Elaine was too busy or too tired to do it herself. Charles noticed, of course. He'd beam at me over breakfast, calling me a blessing to the family. Elaine basked in it, at first. She bragged about me to her friends at the salon, to Charles's colleagues at dinner parties. "I don't know what I'd do without Harper, she's been such a gift." She'd say it while tucking her arm into mine, her nails digging just enough to remind me who was really in control. Except she wasn't. Not anymore. The kids trusted me in a way they didn't trust her. I knew Maddie's secret Instagram account, where she posted selfies in crop tops she'd never wear out of the house. I knew Noah's secret stash of weed in the glove box of his Jeep. I knew Simon's nightmares about their parents fighting in the middle of the night. I never judged. I never told. I just kept their secrets like little treasures. And every time Elaine tried to scold them for something small, missed chores, bad grades, too much screen time, I'd be there, gently on their side, smoothing things over. "You're too hard on Maddie," I'd say, my voice soft but clear. "She's doing her best." Or, "Simon's only 11, Mom. Let him be a kid." Mom. I only called her that when Charles or the kids were in earshot. Each time, I saw her flinch behind her smile. She knew what I was doing, but she couldn't call me out without looking like the crazy one. One night, in April, I saw my first chance to pull a string loose. It was late, a Thursday. I'd stayed over to help Simon with a school project, and Charles offered to drive me home. He liked driving. He liked any excuse to talk about his investments, his big plans for their next vacation, the house renovation he wanted to start in the fall. We were halfway to my apartment when he asked, out of nowhere, "You and your mother, are you two, okay?" He said it so carefully, like he already knew the answer but wanted me to lie. I played it well, I let my face fall just a little, just enough for him to see something hidden. She tries. She really does. But sometimes it's hard. Charles drummed his fingers on the steering wheel. "She's been through a lot, you know. She loves you." I nodded, looking out the window at the streetlights smearing past. "Yeah. I know." I waited a beat. Then, like I was confessing a sin, "It's just, sometimes she says things about Dad. Stuff that isn't true. And it's hard for me to forget." Silence. I felt him shift beside me, uncomfortable. He didn't press. But I saw the seed plant itself in his head. A week later, Maddie handed me Elaine's phone by accident. We were in the kitchen, gossiping about her English teacher. Elaine was upstairs napping, her favorite mid-afternoon escape. Maddie thought the phone was hers. When I tapped the screen to check, the last message popped up in full view. Elaine, he's so gullible. If I play it right, I'll get him to refinance the house this summer. He'll never see it coming. It wasn't addressed to Charles. It wasn't about Charles, it was to an unknown number, signed with just a single E. I screenshotted it. I mailed it to myself. Maddie didn't notice, she was too busy complaining about being grounded last weekend. It took 3 days to trace the number to a name, Dennis Blake. A lawyer. A name I didn't recognize, so I dug deeper. Dennis Blake wasn't her lawyer. He wasn't even her friend. He was Leonard's old lawyer, the one she used for her bankruptcy filing. The one she'd used when Leonard ran off. Suddenly, her plan clicked into place. Elaine hadn't just latched onto Charles for love. She was working her escape route. Just like before. I knew I had to wait. Timing was everything. But that week, for the first time, I dreamt about the end. I pictured Charles alone in the living room, staring at papers he didn't understand. The kids in the hallway, whispering about the fight. Elaine, standing outside in the driveway, begging someone, anyone, to listen. And me, leaning on the porch rail, calm as a glass of water, while her perfect life crumbled behind her. That night, I slept like a baby. By May, the tension between me and Elaine was thin as spun glass, glossy on the surface, but one flick away from shattering. She knew something was off. She could feel me pulling her strings, though she couldn't see my hands. I could tell by the way her eyes lingered too long on me when I laughed with Charles, or how she bit down on her lip when Maddie asked me to come dress shopping again instead of her. Still, she kept up the show. So did I. The difference was, I had patience. And she had a habit of cracking first. One Sunday, we were setting up for a backyard cookout, Charles's idea, a chance for the whole neighborhood to meet the blended family again before summer. The patio was decked out in fairy lights and white and blue checkered tablecloths. Maddie helped string lights through the trees while Noah fiddled with the Bluetooth speaker. Simon was running around with the dog, barking louder than the actual dog. I was in the kitchen, sliding deviled eggs onto a tray, when Elaine slipped in behind me. She moved so silently I felt her breath on my neck before I heard her voice. "Stop it," she hissed. I turned slowly, holding the tray like a shield. "Stop what?" Her eyes darted toward the window, where Charles stood by the grill, flipping burgers and laughing with the neighbors. She lowered her voice, teeth bared behind her pretty lipstick. "I don't know what you're telling him. Or what you think you're doing. But you need to stop." I tilted my head, giving her my best confused daughter look. "Mom, I'm just trying to help. I want this family to work. Don't you?" Her nails dug into my wrist so hard I almost dropped the tray. Her breath smelled like mint and wine. "You think you're so clever," she spat. "You're nothing without me. Remember that." I wanted to laugh in her face, but I didn't. I just blinked back fake tears and whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you." She let go of my wrist when she heard footsteps. Charles poked his head in a moment later, beaming. "Ladies. Everything okay?" Elaine's switch was instant, like flicking a light. She flashed him her perfect party smile. "Perfect, darling. Harper's just amazing, helping with everything." She shot me a look that said, "I dare you." I smiled back. "Anything for Mom." When Charles stepped back out, I touched my wrist where her nails had broken the skin. Tiny crescent moons of red. A reminder of how brittle she really was. That night, after the guests left and the kids were cleaning up, Charles poured me a glass of sweet iced tea and pulled me aside on the porch. The fairy lights twinkled behind him, soft yellow against the dark trees. Harper, he said, voice low, I need to ask you something. I pretended to hesitate. Okay. He stared into the yard for a second. Your mother, she didn't tell me much about how things ended with your father. She just said he was difficult. Controlling. Was that true? I let silence bloom between us. Just enough. Then I shook my head, slow. No. Dad was good to me. He's a good man. I forced my voice to break a little, like it hurt to say. He did everything alone when she left. He never said a bad word about her. Not once. Charles's brow furrowed. He nodded slowly, pressing his lips together. I could practically see him doing the math. My father, the quiet mechanic who never remarried, Elaine, the flighty butterfly who'd flown off and landed in his wallet. I finished the job. I leaned in, touched his sleeve like a scared little girl. Please don't tell her I said that. She'd be so mad. He put his big warm hand over mine. Of course not, sweetheart. You can trust me. That night, I sat awake in bed, reading the old emails between Elaine and Dennis Blake. They were dry legal talk, full of dollar signs and thinly veiled threats. But the subtext was clear enough. Elaine was lining her nest, just like before. She was siphoning Charles's trust, bit by bit, setting up accounts she didn't want him to know about. I needed proof he couldn't ignore. So I went looking for it. It wasn't hard. Elaine was careless when she thought no one was watching. She used the same password for everything. One night, while she snored upstairs, I slipped into her little rosewood desk in the study and opened her laptop. Within 15 minutes, I had her emails forwarded to an anonymous burner account. Photos, receipts, drafts of messages she'd never dare say aloud. I saved them all. The next morning, I made pancakes for the kids, humming while the house slowly woke up around me. Elaine came down last, eyes puffy, hair still wild from sleep. She stopped dead when she saw me at her stove, flipping pancakes like I owned the place. You should sleep in more, Mom, I said sweetly, meeting her eyes over my shoulder. I've got everything under control. I stacked the golden pancakes on a plate, dripping with butter and syrup. Simon hugged my waist, beaming at me like I was the best big sister in the world. Elaine just stood there, gripping the counter, her knuckles white. And for the first time, I knew she saw it too. She wasn't in control anymore. Summer came in like a storm, hot, sticky, slow, stretching out the days until they felt almost soft at the edges. By June, I was so woven into that house that even the walls seemed to expect me. I'd show up after work with ice cream for the kids or fresh flowers for the kitchen island. Charles called me his bonus daughter. Maddie called me her real sister. And Elaine, she called me Harper through clenched teeth. She tried to freeze me out. She tried to warn the kids, quietly, in snippets I'd overhear behind doors left ajar. Don't trust her too much, Maddie. She's not really your sister, you know that, right? Simon, sweetie, don't tell Harper everything. She doesn't need to know everything. But they never listened. Because by now, I was the safe place they ran to when she slammed doors, or snapped at Charles for forgetting to pick up her dry cleaning, or hissed at Noah for playing video games instead of studying for the SAT. The harder she clung to her illusion of control, the more obvious her cracks became. One evening in July, Charles invited me to dinner, just the two of us, at a steakhouse downtown. Elaine claimed she had a migraine. Maddie begged to come, but he said it was adult talk. I knew what he was doing before we even ordered drinks. He wanted answers. He wanted me to slip, to tell him he was crazy for suspecting anything. We talked about college. About my dad. About how hard it must have been. And then, over dessert, he asked the real question. Harper, he said gently, has your mother ever asked you for money? I sipped my iced tea, tilted my head like I was puzzled. Money? No. Why? He looked down at his folded hands. I think she's been hiding things from me. His voice cracked, just slightly. You'd tell me, wouldn't you? If you knew something? I let my eyes fill, big, sad, perfect. I'd never lie to you, Charles. I promise. He took a long breath, nodding. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a stack of printed bank statements, withdrawals, wire transfers, checks in her name. He'd already found the trail. He just needed someone to tell him he wasn't crazy. I looked at the pages like they burned. She didn't tell you about any of this? He shook his head, misery dripping from every line in his face. I thought maybe you'd know why. I didn't answer him directly. Instead, I set the hook. Maybe you should talk to Dennis Blake. I let the name hang in the air like poison. He frowned. Who's that? I shrugged, eyes wide. I saw some emails. His name came up a lot. Maybe he can explain. I didn't push it. I didn't need to. By the time the check came, I could see it in his eyes, an old fear bubbling up. He trusted me more than her now. The kids trusted me more than her now. All that was left was the push that would tip it from suspicion to ruin. And that push came sooner than I expected. A week later, I got the call at midnight. Maddie's voice, trembling, "Can you come over? Mom and Charles are fighting. It's bad." I pulled on jeans and drove over, heart calm, pulse steady. When I got there, the house was chaos. Simon was crying in the upstairs hall. Noah was pacing the driveway, fists jammed in his pockets. Inside, I could hear the shouting, Elaine's shrill fury, Charles's low, shaking growl. I found Maddie on the stairs, knees tucked to her chest. She looked up at me with wet, pleading eyes. She called him stupid. She said he'd never prove anything. I hugged her, murmured soft comforts. Then I went into the kitchen, where Charles was standing by the island, clutching a manila folder like it was a lifeline. Elaine was at the far end, wild-eyed, hair falling from her bun. When she saw me, her face twisted into something ugly. "Get out," she snapped. "This is none of your business." But Charles held up a hand. His voice cracked like thunder. "It is her business, Elaine. She's family. Not like you." I stood beside him, close enough to feel his rage humming in the air. He opened the folder and pulled out the printed emails, my emails. The proof I'd left like breadcrumbs. Elaine lunged for them, but I stepped between them, gentle as glass. "Don't." I said it so quietly she froze. Charles's hand trembled as he pointed to the page. "Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you weren't planning to sell the Vermont house behind my back. Tell me you weren't draining the trust for the kids' college funds." Elaine's mouth worked but no sound came. For the first time in years, maybe the first time ever, she had no script to read from. She looked at me, just for a moment. I thought she might spit, or scream, or lunge again. But all that fight drained out of her eyes. She knew it was over. Charles turned to me, voice breaking. "Can you take the kids upstairs? Please." I nodded, squeezing his arm gently. "Of course." I found Maddie, Noah, and Simon in the hall. I led them upstairs, away from the yelling that came next. I sat with them in Noah's room until they fell asleep in a huddle on the floor, like puppies who didn't know where else to go. I lay awake beside them, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me. Beneath me, I could feel the heartbeat of the house shifting, Elaine's kingdom splintering at the seams. And somewhere deep in my chest, that cold little knot unfurled. Not warmth. Not joy. Just satisfaction. I'd played the perfect daughter. And it had worked. But I wasn't done yet. By August, Elaine's kingdom was ash and dust. Charles filed for divorce within days of that midnight fight. He moved fast, his lawyer, a shark named Gregory Klein, came to the house twice a week with binders and grim smiles. Elaine tried everything, tears, threats, whispered apologies behind locked doors. I watched her orbit the house like a ghost, her presence shrinking by the hour. The kids clung to me tighter than ever. Maddie wouldn't even speak to her. Simon wouldn't look her in the eye. Noah pretended he didn't care, but I caught him crying into his pillow one night when he thought I was asleep on the sofa. Charles was different, too. Softer, but sharper. He'd catch my eye across the dinner table, sometimes reaching out to pat my hand, his voice hoarse with gratitude. "You saved us, Harper. I don't know what we'd do without you." Elaine heard that once. She'd come into the kitchen in her old pink robe, she looked smaller in it, somehow. Older. She stood there in the doorway, watching Charles squeeze my hand, hearing him thank me for being the glue. Her eyes were dead stars. When she spoke, her voice was a dry whisper. "You think you've won?" I held her stare. Quiet, calm. "I didn't win. You just lost." She flinched, like I'd slapped her. For a moment I wondered if she'd scream, claw at my face, shatter all the pretty glass dishes in the cabinet. But she just turned and drifted upstairs, leaving her cold coffee untouched on the counter. The next week, she moved out. No big scene, no slamming doors or shrieking accusations. Just 3 suitcases and a box of jewelry she'd hidden in the closet behind her winter coats. Maddie sat on the front steps the whole time, glaring at her through tearless eyes. Noah didn't come out of his room. Simon stayed with me in the den, a blanket over his head like he was hiding from a thunderstorm. I watched her load the suitcases into the trunk of her ancient silver sedan, her last leftover relic from Leonard, which she'd kept hidden in a storage lot for years. She didn't say goodbye to me. She didn't say goodbye to the kids. She just drove away without looking back, like she had all those years ago when I was 16, except this time, there was no Leonard waiting at the curb. Just her. Alone. The day after she left, Charles asked to see me in his office. It was early evening, the house quiet, Maddie at a friend's, Noah working a shift at the hardware store, Simon at soccer camp. He sat me down at his big walnut desk. Papers were spread across it, divorce documents, trust paperwork, property deeds. He looked tired, but beneath it, there was something lighter in his eyes, like a man who'd just crawled out of a burning building. "I need to ask you something, Harper." I folded my hands in my lap, my best good daughter posture. "Anything." He tapped a stack of pages, an addendum to his will. Another to the house deed. "You've done more for this family than I ever deserved. More than she ever did. I want to make sure you're taken care of. I want you to have security here, with us, if you want it." I kept my breath steady, though I felt my heart stutter once, just once. "What does that mean?" I asked, soft as silk. Charles smiled, tired, grateful. "It means I'm putting part of the house in your name. It's yours now too. You'll always have a place here. Always." He didn't see the tiny tremor in my hands when I reached out to hug him. I let him hold me, let him call me his daughter. I felt the warmth of his trust sink into my skin like sun through a window. It was done. Elaine's perfect daughter, the ribbon she tied around her messy life to sell her fairy tale, had just taken her seat at the table she built on lies. When the paperwork was signed, I sat alone on the back porch as the cicadas buzzed in the summer dark. I looked out at the yard where Maddie once strung fairy lights, where Simon played tag with the dog, where Elaine used to stand with her wine glass raised like a queen in a picture-perfect kingdom. I thought about sending her a picture, one last twist of the knife. But I didn't. I didn't need to. She knew. Wherever she was, in her dingy trailer on the outskirts of town, surrounded by wilted flowers she couldn't afford to replace, she knew exactly what I'd done. And she knew there was nothing left to take back. I was her masterpiece. Her mirror. Her ruin. And I'd never been prouder of the girl who learned how to smile while she burned everything down. Fall crept in slow, golden and crisp, wrapping the house in an illusion of peace. On the surface, everything settled, lawyers stopped calling at midnight, the gossip among Charles's colleagues died down, the neighbors went back to pretending they hadn't seen the police car parked out front that one stormy evening. The kids found new rhythms. Maddie painted her room sage green and taped band posters over the spots where her mother's framed photos used to hang. Noah got into a state college a few hours away. He didn't hug Elaine goodbye when he left. Simon stopped asking when Mom was coming back. Instead, he asked if I'd still be here when he woke up. I always told him yes. Charles grew gentle in the way only broken men can be. He took me to dinner once a week, just us, little steak places, greasy burger joints, an occasional fancy Italian spot where the servers knew his name. He liked to sit across from me and beam when I laughed at his tired jokes. "You're the best thing that's happened to me, Harper. To this family." Every time he said it, I felt that old coil inside me tighten and hum. Satisfaction. Control. A shadow of pity, maybe, but never enough to make me flinch. Elaine did try to crawl back, pathetic attempts. First, calls from a burner number, "Charles, you know this is all a mistake, please just talk to me." Then emails that sounded like prayers dipped in poison, "Harper, you don't understand what you've done. You think they love you now? Wait. They'll turn on you, just like they did me." I never answered. She sent letters next. Long rambling pages in shaky cursive. Begging. Blaming. Bargaining. She wrote about Leonard, how he'd promised to come back for her. About Charles, how he'd tricked her, used her. About me, how I'd always been a cold, unnatural thing, a girl with my father's stone eyes. I kept them all in a shoebox under my bed. A little museum of her downfall. Proof that she knew exactly who won. But I didn't tell Charles about the letters. I didn't need to. He was busy rewriting his life, recasting me as the daughter he wished he'd always had. He asked about my college classes, paid my tuition balance without blinking. He called me into the living room one Friday evening, handed me a new set of keys, my own room, my own car. "This family is yours too," he said. His voice cracked on family. And when Maddie and Simon hugged me from both sides, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not love, never that. But maybe something like belonging, stitched from my own careful lies. One night, deep in October, after the kids were asleep and Charles was upstairs watching late-night golf replays, I sat alone at the kitchen table with a glass of cheap wine. The house was warm, humming with the soft hush of dishwashers and distant TVs. I pulled out one of Elaine's letters, creased, stained with her desperate ink. I read it again, savoring every line. "You think they'll love you forever? Wait. One day they'll see who you really are." I smiled at that. Because she was right, maybe they would. Maybe someday, someone would peer close enough to see the machinery behind my perfect smile, the little vault of secrets I kept in my head. But that day wasn't today. And when it came, if it came, I'd be ready. I folded the letter neatly, slipped it back in the box. Then I went upstairs to check on Simon, kissed his forehead while he dreamed under his rocket ship quilt. I peeked into Maddie's room. She was sprawled across her new green sheets, phone still glowing in her hand. I plugged it in for her, brushed her hair off her cheek. Last, I stopped at Charles's door. It was cracked open. He was asleep in his recliner, TV flickering blue across his lined face. His mouth hung slightly open, a snore just starting to catch. I watched him for a moment, this man who'd handed me everything because he needed someone to believe in, someone to forgive the truth he'd always ignored. I whispered it to him, soft enough that only the dark could hear, "Good night, Dad." I closed the door, the smile curling at my lips, warm as poison. Winter settled in like a hush, snow layered the streets, soft and clean, hiding the bones of what I'd buried. By December, the divorce was final. Charles didn't even flinch when he signed the last page in the lawyer's downtown office. He handed the pen back with steady hands, eyes forward, no trace of the man who'd once believed every pretty lie Elaine ever told him. He'd traded her for a new truth, a daughter who never asked for more than she earned, who made him feel like the man he pretended to be. Maddie started therapy, at Charles's insistence. Some evenings she'd come home from sessions quiet and glassy-eyed. She'd find me in the kitchen and just press her forehead against my shoulder, letting me hold her like I was her anchor. Simon clung tighter in the cold months, his small hands slipping into mine whenever we walked to the bus stop together. Noah came home for winter break, half awkward in his college hoodie, the smell of cheap dorm beer clinging to him. He hugged me at the door, mumbled, "You're the only one who answered my calls when I got homesick, you know that?" I only smiled and told him I was proud. He didn't see the box of letters I'd shoved further under my bed that morning, Elaine's ghost, clawing at the door she'd never get through again. And Charles. Charles was softer than ever. A tired man who wore gratitude like armor. He invited me into meetings with the lawyer, with the banker, with the realtor who came to appraise the lake house up north. "It's all yours too now, Harper. You should know how it works, so you're never taken by surprise." He still didn't see that I was the surprise. The secret his beautiful wife left him. A week before Christmas, a card came. No return address, just my name in her hand. Inside, a single line. "I hope it was worth it. No love, no mom." Just that. I set it in the fireplace and watched the flames lick away the last shred of her voice in this house. I didn't tell Charles about it. He didn't ask. Christmas morning, we gathered in the living room, Maddie in fuzzy socks, Simon bouncing off the walls, Noah handing out cheap store-wrapped boxes with his usual sheepish grin. Charles made pancakes, flipping them too high and dropping half on the floor while the dog barked at his feet. The tree sparkled like something out of an old movie, warm white lights, gold ribbon, no sign of the chaos that built it. And me? I sat on the carpet with Simon in my lap, untangling the ribbon from his new toy robot, feeling the heat of the fireplace warm my toes. Maddie rested her head on my shoulder and dozed off before the wrapping paper even settled. Charles poured me a cup of coffee, set it in my hands like it was a gift too. He brushed a kiss against my hair and whispered, "I don't know what I did to deserve you." I almost laughed. But I didn't. I just leaned into him, humming soft agreement. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I walked the silent halls of the house. My house. Her house, once. I touched the walls she painted, the carpets she chose, the marble she bragged about to everyone who'd listen. It was mine now. Every piece. When I went to bed, I slipped my phone from the nightstand and typed out a new note, 3 words, sharp and final, "It was worth it." I didn't send it. She'd never see it anyway. I just let it sit there, glowing in the dark, while I drifted off to sleep in a house that would never be hers again. In the quiet, I dreamed of nothing at all. And for once, that was enough.